the coastline in a few moments, and shortly we should see them here.
Peter, they're doing it as a glider. They've been gliding for the last several thousands of miles across the Pacific.
Yeah, you put your finger on the key thing. This may be an aircraft, but it hasn't got any power.
You only get one chance.
Let's go back to Edwards, where Mort Dean is on station. And Mort, give us some sense of the mood out there, if you would.
Well, I think the mood here on the platform is that the conclusion of this flight is a white knuckle time. As you said, it's a glider coming down, and this ship has one and only one shot at a landing. It can't go around again. And it's coming in, Joe, at an incline that is up to 20 times more steep than that of a commercial airliner.
It's like being in a dive of sorts, and you look at, of course, you can see beautifully because there's 6 windows out the front, and you see the runway coming right up at a fairly high rate of speed. In fact, they'll fly the final at 350 miles an hour.
And Peter, earlier, Dan Brandenstein was flying the shuttle trainer around here, just making some test approaches to the landing area, and he radioed up to Commander Rick Hauk, it's going to be a very easy landing for you, and Hauk radioed back, easy for you, perhaps, and I think that told it all.
We said a little while ago, as a matter of fact, before we actually came back on the air, that there were many Americans coming home tomorrow. Of course, the 5 on board the shuttle. And we're also watching the Syrian capital of Damascus today, because in about an hour and a half or 2 hours from now, we are told that one American, or perhaps an Indian who is resident in the United States, will be released by their captors in Lebanon. There is a group of Americans, 3 Americans, Alan Steen, Robert Polhul, and Jesse Turner, who were captured on January the 24th in 1987. They all were associated with Beirut University College in Beirut. And Mittalswar Singh, you see his picture down on the right, who's an Indian who's a resident of the United States. One of them, we are told, is going to be released by their captors to the Syrians sometime in the next hour and a half or 2 hours, and we'll keep you up to date with that one as well. Mort, tell me what kind of people, if you would, who've come out to Edwards this morning. You said earlier on that there was this long line of trailers that had come out. Who's shown up?
Well, all sorts of people, and they were here last night and early this morning when Joe and I came onto the base. There were long lines of all kinds of cars and trailers and people all across the country. Many have come here for vacations and decided to come onto the base and take a look at the return of the shuttle.
What's the weather like?
The weather is almost perfect. There are some light, thin clouds, but my astronaut friend, or former astronaut friend, Joe Allen, suggests that that's no problem.
It's a perfect flying day.
Joe, explain, and maybe you and Gene can tell us both in the experience of having come back, you more specifically, because, in fact, in an ideal world, you would like to return to Florida, because landing at Edwards Air Force Base adds about $1 million to the bill on any shuttle. Tell folks why you come down out there.
Well, you can... Peter, you can tell just by looking around, there's great margin for error out here. If for some reason the guidance didn't bring you right into the precise runway, you have many miles on either side you could vary. And psychologically, maybe it's a bit easier for the pilots. I would guess that's the main reason. The other, of course, is the weather.
Yep.
Gene?
You know, that's what I was going to say, Peter, the weather.
Yeah.
If you remember how quickly after launch the weather changed within 15 or 20 minutes. I don't believe we could have launched last week. And we cannot predict with any real precise capability what the weather will be at Kennedy. We're out here at Edwards, you know, sun shining almost all year long.
Gene, you did bring up a point, because people didn't see it, but at the Cape last week, just after, remember that Discovery launched in extraordinary weather, just extraordinary weather. And within an hour, I guess, the place was all clouded in. There's also a safety reason, though, as requested in this mission, isn't the Rogers Commission said that the shuttle should continue to land at Edwards Air Force Base until this new modifications on the equipment were tested out.
Well, it's an added burden, because you have to then transport the shuttle back to Kennedy, where instead of landing at Kennedy, you can just tow it over into the barn and get it ready for the next flight. But I think the burden is well worth the cost and the effort and the time it takes, at least for a while.
They slap it onto the back of a 747 and fly it back to Kennedy. Mort, you wanted to say something.
Well, Peter, I think it's worth saying that the astronauts would prefer to land here for all the reasons suggested earlier. And I think it's good to keep in mind that this really is a test vehicle, and this landing will be a test of new brakes, new steering processes, and new landing gear. So the test of the shuttle continues even this morning.
Just to go ahead, Joe.
Peter might mention that Rick has, who'll be flying in the final approach, has landed here before as a pilot, but as the commander, he's never landed here at Edwards. He has landed in Florida, and I was there during that landing. It was very, very smooth indeed, but the weather was a little bit foggy and got foggier after we had landed.
Joe, let me interrupt you because there's our first view of it with 7 minutes, 28 seconds to landing. We can now see the orbiter, which is going to be coming over the coast between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. Gene was deciding to tell us exactly how a few minutes ago and said, and you can get a hint of it there, that it sort of slaloms down the sky, flying first to the left and first to the right. In order to what, Gene? To keep control and speed down, eh?
Well, control, this is an energy management problem. They're trying to transfer the energy of speed and altitude into a precise landing point, and that's what Rick's doing right now. If I'm not mistaken, he's well over 90,000 feet, however, and by the time they cross the field, they're still close to 50,000. So you can see how much altitude they keep as they make that, and how steep that trajectory will be as they make that final approach to landing.
Take air data to GNC only.
GNC only, look out.
And there's our first affirmation, at least for us, that all communications are A-OK. This mission is under the control of the Johnson Space Center now in Houston, Texas, which has controlled it ever since it lifted off from the tower in Kennedy. Lynn Sure is there. Lynn, what does it look like technically from there?
It looks quite as perfect from here as it does from there, Peter. I'd like to point out that Rick Houck, the commander, is wearing that new 70, 80-pound pressure suit, which is an added constraint to them. And these are test suits. They are trying to decide if they want to use them. He gave us a little how-to yesterday in the air-to-ground and the video. It's very, very bulky for them right now, and Rick is sitting there not only with all the things that Mort and Joe and Gene and you have talked about, but he's got this extra suit on, and he's going to have to decide when they get back whether it works and whether they want to wear it. He mentioned yesterday in a press conference he's not sure if, well, he wants to look at it in the future and see. So Rick Houck has landed the orbiter at Kennedy, which, as I understand it, is a lot trickier than landing at Edwards Air Force Base. But now he's landing at Edwards on that wide lake bed, but he does have this bulky suit, which is something to think about.
Well, and you've led us into a discussion of this mission because, in fact, when I was looking back over the mission for the last couple of days, if there'd been any glitches, Gene Cernan, the only one I found was this comment from Rick Houck, who said there would be, quote, discussions with the folks on the ground about the survival suits. It's very clear they haven't enjoyed wearing them.
Well, it's a case of trading off the risk for the encumbrances during a normal flight. It is very uncomfortable. It's very difficult. We had a problem that almost delayed the launch, which was that simple circuit breaker that was tied solely to those suits that they hope they never have to use.
A 5-amp fuse.
5-amp fuse.
Our energy status is right on the money, which means Discovery is coming right down the exact entry and glide slope that is pre-programmed and preferred. Her velocity now 1,300 feet per second. She's at about 62,000 feet.
They're still greater than the speed of
about
sound
32
here.
miles away from touchdown on runway 17 at Edwards Air Force Base.
Gorgeous looking.
It's a fantastic camera picture, and they are moving well over Mach 1 at this point in time. We'll probably get a sonic boom that'll blow little Joe out of his seat down there.
In fact, that, Joe and Mort, that's exactly how people are going to know, first of all, that the orbiter is back because of a couple of sonic booms, right?
Absolutely. It's almost as if the orbiter were applauding its safe return to Earth.
Where she will intersect the heading alignment circle. She'll be making a left overhead turn.
There's some precise flying required here, Peter, because as I said earlier,
it's 249 degrees. They'll be shooting for
it's
the
an
nominal
energy
waypoint
management
on the
situation.
Edwards
He is a glider, and he has to transfer the energy in terms of altitude, you know, that
she will touch down
height
about
above the
2,000
ground and the
feet
speed he
beyond
has,
the
and
runway
dissipate it at the
threshold.
right place and under the right conditions and at the right rate so that he touches down at the end of that runway. Now, Edwards
Peter,
is big.
Peter, we can see it right overhead here at Edwards now. It's just beginning to make a turn.
And although Joe says there's lots of runway out there for safety,
Oh, look.
being a pilot, he wants to put it on the end.
40,000 feet. Velocity 871 feet per second. Verge of intersecting the heading alignment circle.
Oh!
There he is.
That's the second sonic boom there, and of course those are people on the ground. You can hear them very clearly telling us that the shuttle is now in sight. It appears, of course, to be dropping like a stone in many cases.
Reports Discovery is now on the hat.
Looks to be going straight down.
Alignment circle. She's
Well, it's in a
making her
bank. It's a
overhead
left-hand turn.
Looking
It's
good.
descending very steeply, turning back in towards the runway, and it is descending very rapidly. It's sort of like a bathtub with wings.
Discovery Houston, recommend vector transfer to the BFS.
Peter,
Translation, please, Joe.
we're must be seated 5 miles from the crowd, and you can hear the crowd cheering on our platform. They heard the boom and see it very clearly, as do we.
Now, Dick Richards, who was with us, one of the shuttle astronauts the other day, said you could actually fly this thing down by computer. Is that correct?
It was designed to fly hands off all the way down to the ground, but I don't know.
That's correct. I think, Gene, he will fly it, the computer will fly it until he turns about onto final, and then Rick will take control stick steering, we call it, and he'll fly it straight down.
So at the moment, the shuttle is still on automatic pilot, in essence.
Midway around her left overhead.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Of course, the next major thing is he straightens out and heads into the runway is that landing gear. And that's a major component that has to function.
This looks like an airstrip. Of course, it really is the desert, and they've actually painted black strips on the runway, on the desert to identify it as a runway. You guys have been talking about how good it is for a landing base. In fact, rained out there once, and everybody got terribly nervous that the shuttle would stick in the sand, become mud. But today, it is absolutely perfect in all respects.
Peter, the Air Force and NASA has an acronym for everything, and it is said today that all the FODs have been cleared from the runway, foreign objects and debris. They've done a sweep of the runway.
Remember my first recovery of the first shuttle, you can almost feel the presence. There's something happening as it came to this point.
Winds are calm. Looks real pretty.
There it
At
is.
3,000 feet, Discovery will execute her pre-flare maneuver. She's now at about 6,500 feet, descending at a rate of 180 feet per second. Speed 550 feet per second.
$1.7 million miles since she left Cape Canaveral 4 days ago.
Gear down. The gear down and locked. The report from Mission Control.
Yes.
All right.
Main gear touchdown. Commander Houck now rotating the nose down, standing by for nose gear and touchdown.
They don't come any better.
And he had like a baby when he let that nose come down.
Now, one of the problems they had in earlier landings was applying the brakes on. And everything looks just to have been smooth as silk here. In the distance, the national anthem.
We'll stop.
Roger, we'll stop Discovery. Welcome back. A great ending to the new beginning.
Thanks a lot.
And so Discovery sits at Edwards Air Force Base on this glorious day, and we listen to the final few bars.
Discovery Houston.
This is Discovery. How do you read? Thank you very much, and I read you loud and clear.
Discovery Houston 1 Delta.
Roger.
We'd like the secondary controller to off, please.
The crew will be out in just a few minutes, and we'll be back right after this message.
Original Yoplait is the yogurt with nothing on the bottom.
Nothing on the bottom.
I have lumpy yogurt with fruit jammed on the bottom.
Nothing on the bottom.
Yoplait smooth and creamy with fruit right up to the top.
Nothing but natural. Nothing but low fat. Nothing on the bottom. And that's the end of that.
Original Yoplait.
Nothing on the bottom. And that's the
Revlon lips never lie.
That's true.
Long-lasting lipsticks don't always stay true to your lips.
The color changes.
But Revlon's designed a lipstick to stay true to your lips.
Super lustrous lipstick.
The pink stay pink. The red stay red. The color you see is the color you get.
It's magic.
It's magnifique. It's Revlon.
Revlon lips never lie.
The most unforgettable women in the world wear Revlon.
Discovery on the ground at Edwards Air Force Base in California. A couple of hours drive from Los Angeles. A couple of 100,000 people there. Let's listen now as they talk to ground control at Edwards. Work has been done at Cape Canaveral, the Kennedy Space Center, and at the Johnson Space Center. They are now back. And what an enthusiastic welcome you heard them get. At the very first sight, there was a burst of applause from that large crowd, and it was sustained applause until discovery.
Control, Houston, the crew now will be engaging in post-landing procedures to safe the orbiter and prepare her for the gotten ready to be towed to the hangar at drive. Our unofficial time for main gear touchdown, mission elapsed time. Mission elapsed time 4 days, 1 hour, 0 minutes, 8 seconds. Our unofficial time for nose wheel gear touchdown, 1 day. Correction, 4 days, 1 hour, 0 minutes, 18 seconds. And we show wheel stop unofficially at 4 days.
There
1
you get
hour,
some sense
0
of what the
minutes,
pilot,
57 seconds.
the commander had to look at as they came in. That enormous piece of desert on which they landed today.
The orbiter safing
and they now just simply sit there as we look at it from a helicopter.
A series of events that'll take about 15
And
minutes.
we can have a look again now at this landing. 4 days, 1 minute, 8 seconds after it took off.
The gear down and locked. The report from Mission Control. Main gear touchdown. Commander out now rotating the nose down, standing by for nose gear and touchdown.
What I missed on this occasion, Gene and Turner, was that little aircraft he used to fly alongside and count the feet off to touchdown. He seems to have been able to do it in a different way this time.
Well, I was looking for the chase aircraft when we first saw the shuttle coming through about 50,000 feet, but I didn't see him. I don't know whether they used him on this flight or not. They certainly didn't make a pass after the shuttle landed.
Now, give us some sense. In fact, let me ask Joe Allen, because you've come down in this particular vehicle. Joe, what goes on at the moment? They won't be out for as long as 30 minutes from now, right?
That's correct. They still have quite a long checklist to go through, and it's mainly turning off equipment. They'll bring it to a point where the orbiter's quite safe and is happy to be left for a while. Then they'll come down, and a backup crew, support crew, will go in and finish the job. They should be coming down the steps in about 30 minutes.
So what are they doing at the moment, Joe, specifically?
They're going through a post-landing checklist, calling off switches and throwing switches. We'll hear them also talk from time to time, I would guess, with Houston.
One of the impressions we had here, and I asked this to Joe and to Gene particularly, is that it was all gentler in all respects. And on previous missions, we've looked for some of the tiles to be missing from the heat shield. Nothing appears to be missing, at least at this distance so far, Gene.
Well, this may be credibility to the effort and work that was put into this particular space vehicle during the last 2.5 years. There's a lot of changes that went in and somewhere to the structure of the wing, which I'm sure affected some of those tiles.
Joe, did you notice anything at all?
Not a thing, Peter. We've looked at it through glasses. It looks shiny, brand new. Hard to believe it's traveled nearly, as you say, 1.7 million miles this trip for a total of about 22 million miles, I calculate.
Peter, I noticed something. The unrestrained joy gave way to Joe Allen grabbing his wallet. He says he had a bet with Rick Houck about landing right on the money, right on the mark, and he thinks he lost some big money here. Houck put it right down, right about where he was supposed to.
I'm happy to lose it. Happy to lose it.
Well, we won't embarrass you, but they'll take this off now and then. How soon will they get it back to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida? And how long will it take, Joe, to get this thing ready to fly again?
Once again, it's not scheduled to fly for several months. The next machine up is Atlantis, if I remember correctly, which will go in November. It's being prepared in Florida right now.
Do you have any, Mortan, Joe, some final impressions about this overall mission? Well, let me preface it by saying that one of the things that struck me was that everybody was phenomenally interested in the liftoff, and NASA thought this would cause a rejuvenation in interest in the space program. And then it kind of tapered off until landing. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that's bound to happen. There was so much excitement at launch time, and there wasn't an awful lot for the astronauts to do beyond the first day when they jettisoned that communications satellite. So I think that was natural. Everything looked as if it had operated almost perfectly on this mission, but frequently, after a few days of examination, NASA comes up with a problem or two that did develop that we just didn't know about. But it sure looked like a great mission to me, and probably to you too, Joe.
Joe, within the space agency, it must have given people a tremendous boost and a rebirth in many ways.
No question about it. More comments that the timeline was not filled. NASA had reserved lots of time to troubleshoot problems that they felt would arise in a machine that had not flown for nearly 3 years. And lo and behold, the cobwebs had been taken out prior to flight. There was nothing, I think, unusual that happened. The crew had time to enjoy the flight a bit, and it's a near-perfect mission as far as I can tell.
And Lynn Scher at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, what have we learned from this one, Lynn?
Well, I think what we learned, Peter, is that never again are we going to say that spaceflight is operational. If you'll recall, back in July 4th of 1982, Ronald Reagan was there when Columbia landed and said, "I declare this operational." Spaceflight will never be operational in that sense. I don't think that NASA is going to be in anything but a test mode and a test mentality for a long time. This flight technically cleared away Challenger, and now we can go on, but it's still in a test mode. Peter?
Okay, Lynn, thanks very much. And Gene, what are your observations at this point? I think I know.
A nation with renewed faith. I really feel and sense that out there in the American public, and I think this landing just sort of put that all together.
Good. It's been nice having you, and I want to thank Joe Allen and Mortine as well, but particularly having you here again always makes us feel a lot more secure when you're flying in that seat.
It's an honor and a pleasure, Peter.
I want to go to Washington just before we leave, because we said at the beginning of the broadcast there may be another American returning home today. Bob Zelnick has been following this hostage situation in the Middle East from the Pentagon. Bob, what's the latest that you know?
Peter, early today, U.S. diplomats were told by the Syrian government that an American hostage would be released through Syrian auspices at what amounts to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, we're told it will be one of the 4 American citizens who were seized at Beirut University in January 1987 by a group calling itself the Islamic Jihad for the Liberation of Palestine. That's a pro-Iranian group, and my administration sources tell me that Iran has been very active behind the scenes in working for this hostage to be released. The State Department has set up a working group to deal with the release when it occurs.
The State Department has gone out of its way to say that the United States has not been negotiating at all. Have they been as emphatic as the Defense Department?
Yes, both defense and other administration sources say that there have been indirect indications to Iran and from Iran as to what would happen, but no direct negotiations, no quid pro quo. Of course, that's political dynamite in this town at this time.
Okay, but we can't obviously confirm, but we may be talking about this group that was kidnapped on January the 24th in 1987, all identified with Beirut University College. 3 Americans and 1 Indian citizen actually living in the United States, or a U.S. resident. There are, of course, other Americans there as well. Terry Anderson, the journalist for the Associated Press, has been there the longest time. Thomas Sutherland, Frank Herbert Reed are still missing. And, of course, kidnapped in South Lebanon, Colonel Higgins from the UN Observer Force, which ironically won the Nobel Peace Prize this year, is still in the hands of someone in the Middle East as well. So we cannot be sure, A, that it's happened. We're told by almost everybody that it's about to be happening, and we cannot be absolutely sure at this point who it will be. But we will be back with first news if an American is released in the Middle East today. So Discovery is home as well. I'm Peter Jennings. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a special report from ABC News. We now resume our regular program schedule after this from our local stations.
feet above sea level. I don't know what it is, but I was trying to get investors to start a water slide world with me here, so if there's anyone interested after the trip, I will be available for discussion. There's the other opening of that cave, though. It goes in and horseshoes around and comes right back out.
Shining in the sun, covering the shore, When I see them, my heart tells me that I love you more than all the little pearly shells. For every grain of sand upon the beach, I've got a kiss for you, and I've got more left over for each drop that twinkles in the blue. Pearly shells from the ocean, shining in the sun, covering the shore. When I see them, my heart tells me that I love you more than all the little pearly shells. Pearly shells from the ocean, shining in the sun, covering the shore. When I see them, my heart tells me that I love you more than all the little pearly shells. More than all the little pearly shells.
out. And looks like our trip for this afternoon is coming to an end. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you on behalf of your crew today. That's Soren and Drew, myself, Bob. Thank you very much for choosing our boat to ride down the coast on. We sure do hope that you enjoyed the trip and that you continue to have a pleasant stay here on the island of Kauai. And when you head home, have a real safe trip. And hopefully we'll see you back here someday real soon. So mahalo and aloha.
Yeah. Turn it, buddy.
Give me my, give me your. Oh, this one. I'm going down and get my other lamp. I took the.
Come on, I'll catch you.
I'm sure. there'll be no regretting. Will she remember me? Will she forget? I'll send 1,000 flowers where the trade winds blow. I'll send my lonely heart, for I love her so. Someday I know she'll come back again to me. Till then my heart will be beyond the to you, sweetheart, aloha, from the bottom of my heart. Keep the smile on your lips, brush the tear from your eye. One more aloha, then it's time for goodbye. To you, sweetheart, aloha, New York. In dreams, I'll be with you, dear, tonight. And I'll pray for that day when we two will meet again. Until then, sweetheart,
Where you go swimming.
Dip?
Yeah, this is the dip. Keep it on there.
Hazardous crossing, dangerous water. How deep is it today?
You got your mic in, Bruce?
I sure do.
And I'm going to do a good job.
Night and you and blue Hawaii. The night is heavenly, and you are heaven to me. Oh, lovely you and blue Hawaii. With all this loveliness, there should be love. Come with me while the moon is on the sea. The night is young and so dreams come true in blue Hawaii, and mine can all come true this magic night. remember one September afternoon, I stood with you and listened to a wedding tune. And didn't I go with you on your honeymoon? Remember me. Do you recall a cottage small upon a hill, where every day I had to pay another bill? And if I'm not mistaken, dear, I pay them still. Remember me. I can see that little angel on your knee. Can't you see? He kinda sorta looks like me. For I'm the boy whose only joy is loving you, who worries till he hurries home when day is through. And I'm the guy you give your goodnight kisses to. Remember me. Good night, kisses too. Remember me.
Gather round me, children, and I'll tell a story of the mountains in the days when guns was law. When two families got disputing, it was bound to end in shooting. So just listen close and I'll tell you what I saw.
All the Martins and the boys, they were reckless mountain boys.
And they took up family feuding when they'd meet. Why, they would shoot each other quicker than it took your eye to flicker. And they could knock a squirrel's eye out at 90 feet. All their fighting started one bright Sunday morning, when old Grandpa Kauai was full of Mountain Dew. Just as quiet as a church mouse, he stole in the Martins' hen house, 'cause the Kauais, they needed eggs for breakfast too.
All the Martins and the Kauai, they were reckless mountain boys.
But old Grandpa Kauai is gone where angels live. Why, when they found him on the mountain, he was bleeding like a fountain, 'cause they punctured him till he looked like a sieve. Now after that they started out to fight in earnest, and they scarred the mountains up with shot and shell. Why, there was uncles, brothers, cousins, say they bumped them off by dozens. Just how many bit the dust, it's hard to tell.
All the Martins and the Kauai, they were reckless mountain boys.
At the art of killing, they became quite deft. Now they all know they shouldn't do it, but before they hardly knew it, on each side they only had one person left. Now the sole remaining Martin was a maiden, and as pretty as a picture was this Grace, while the one surviving boy was the handsome Henry Kauai, and the folks all knowed they'd soon meet face to face.
All the Martins and the Kauai, they were
they're shooting and they're killing sure played hob. And it didn't bring no joy to know that Grace and Henry Coy, they both had sworn that they would finish up the job. So they finally met upon a mountain pathway. And Henry Coy, he aimed his gun at Grace. Why, he was set to pull the trigger when he saw her pretty figure. You could see that love had kicked him in the face. Oh, the Martins and the Coys, they were excellent mountain boys. But they say their ghostly cousin gives you chills. Cause that hatchet sure was buried when sweet Grace and Henry married. It broke up the best darn feud in these here hills. Now you may think that this is where the story ended, but I'm telling you, them ghosts don't cuss no more. Cause since Grace and Henry wedded, they fight worse than all the rest did, and they carry on the feud just like before.
It's delightful down in Chile when the nights are nice and chilly.
And the golden moon is hanging low. Da-da-di-da-da-da-da-di-da-da.
You'd be such a sweet muchacha. We could do a lot in Chile.
And it might get hot in Chile.
Even while the ocean breezes blow. Oh, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Mi amigo, when do we go?
You would be beautiful there, wearing a rose in your hair.
Don't you think I ought to wear chinchilli?
It's as nice in Piccadilly,
or in Brooklyn, or in Philly,
or in Raleigh, or in Bally Valley.
Da-da-di-da-da-da-da-di-da.
Yes, it would be rather jolly down in Chile on a chilly night. It's colder in Dakota and in Maine and Minnesota.
When it's winter in Mongolia, they all get melancholia.
And the weather makes you wearier in dreary old Siberia.
But it's awfully jolly in Chile.
In London, where it's foggier, the weather gets you groggier.
And folks in Pennsylvania admit the rain is rainier.
They never bet the zero down in Rio de Janeiro.
But it's simply scrumptious in Chile.
Though traffic finds you lost in Philadelphia or Boston.
And the flaming sun in Florida may make you feel much harder.
When it's cold in Manitoba, almost nobody is sober.
I love it in Chile.
It's as nice as Piccadilly.
Or in Brooklyn, or in Philly.
Down in Chile on a chilly night.
Matinee, seats for two, I was there, where were you? Matinee, curtain call, and a hush through the hall. I had hoped you'd arrive as the stage came alive with a show about a boy who loved a girl as I loved you. When they kissed, it tore my heart out. Once our love was like this, and I acted every part out as I thought of your kiss. Matinee and seats for two, I was there, but where were you? Then, like us, they had a quarrel, and she left him alone. But their story has a moral that we both should have known. Love that's true never did run smooth. Matinee, true to life, with the joy and the strife. They were sad as could be. That was you, that was me. But they kissed at the finale, and my heart melted away. Matinee, seats for two, I was there. Where were you today? Matinee, true to life, with the joy and the strife. They were sad as could be. That was you, that was me. But they kissed at the finale, and my heart melted away. Matinee, seats for two, I was there. Where were you today?
senorita lets you come in. Managua, Nicaragua is a heavenly place.
You ask a senorita for a little embrace. She answers you, cramble, scramble, bamborito.
In Managua, Nicaragua, that's no.
I have been to